Welcome to the Silverthorne Pulse. I'm Kim Jardim, and I'm here today with Town Manager Ryan Hyland. Thanks for being here, Ryan.
Thanks, Kim.
And we're here to discuss the December 14th work session and Town Council meetings. So we'll start off with a discussion regarding the Joint Sewer Authority. Can you tell me a little bit about the Joint Sewer Authority and what that provides to our community?
You bet. We affectionately call it the JSA, and it is a wastewater treatment plant. And so Silverthorne, it's a joint authority, and so there are a number of entities that utilize the facility, but Silverthorne is the managing partner, if you will. And so a lot of conversations recently about the capacity of the plant. And there's a lot of capacity left in that plant for growth for all of the entities that use it. But historically, when the agreements were first established, and I should mention it's Silverthorne, Dillon Valley, Town of Dillon, Mesa Cortina, and Buffalo Metro District, also known as Wilderness. So those are the entities who wastewater from those communities goes to the JSA. And when the plant was originally built, there was an allocation. We call it EQRs, which is basically just the capacity in the plant, and that was assigned, by an agreement on paper to each of those entities. Here's how much capacity you have. When that was established, it was done very conservatively, and so the capacity that exists on those pieces of paper is significantly lower than the actual capacity in the plant. And so after many years, some of those communities and areas are bumping up against their capacity on paper. So each of the entities in the authority has agreed that we have plenty of capacity in the actual plant, and so being conservative again, as was done at the very outset of that facility, 10% more capacity allocated on paper to each of those entities allows for if someone wants to do an accessory dwelling unit or they're not bumping up against the paper capacity there. So each of the entities will be doing what the town of Silverthorne is doing at the next meeting, resolution to approve the amendment to that intergovernmental agreement. I think a couple of the entities have actually already done that, but Silverthorne will undertake that at our next meeting. So,
fabulous.
We don't talk much about wastewater, but it is one of the most important things from a health and safety perspective that we have in our community. And again, Silverthorne's the managing partner of that facility, which is located just a bit north of the Silverthorne Elementary. So
great. And I think it's important to note too that even with this increased allocation to these areas, that the plant is still not maxed out in terms of capacity.
Yeah, not even close. So that 10% again is really conservative, allows folks to be able to have some growth, but not impact the future of the plant.
Great. And it's my understanding there was also some discussion regarding the parking lot on Rainbow Drive that's part of the Green Village, or what used to be part of the Green Village at the outlets at Silverthorne. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Yeah,
so for many years we had had a partnership with the outlets for the parking lot when that Green Village that's no longer there existed, and then after it was demolished, an agreement that could serve as public parking as well as parking for the outlets. And so that's really served everyone well. I know employees of local businesses have parked there. We have events. It's just really served the public well. There's a new owner of that parking lot, and so we had a conversation with council about a formal lease to be able to use that as public parking in the interim before that new owner redevelops that site. And so that's something that council was supportive of. So we'll get that formalized and bring that back to a future meeting. But again, it's a nice reservoir of parking. It won't be there forever. We will be, when that property gets redeveloped, the developer will be required to add more on-street parking on Rainbow Drive. And so I think that will accommodate some of the parking that's there going on today. But that could be a year or two. We'll see how that redevelopment occurs. But so we will, as the town, take on the insurance liability for that area and plow and maintain that until the developer needs it for the redevelopment. So we'll formalize that at the next meeting, but council is supportive of that in the work session.
Excellent. I've seen a lot of the public using that lot for
Yeah.
several months now, so it's
Yeah.
fantastic that we have that
First
in the interim.
Fridays, weddings, local employees, it is a nice reservoir of parking.
For sure. So we have some great news regarding some grant monies that the town will be receiving. One is from is it called Greater Outdoor Colorado?
Yeah,
also known as
affectionately
the
known as
GOCO.
GOCO. Right.
So that will be for the Trent Park expansion at the base of the Willowbrook neighborhood.
Right. We've talked about that project a number of times here, and that will be under construction in 2023. And yeah, great news. GOCO has officially awarded $600,000 to that project. So we're really excited to be partnering with GOCO again. We've had some previous grants for the Blue River Trail, and their board officially approved that grant last week. So pretty exciting.
Exciting
We're always
stuff.
looking to get those outside funds. And then another one, we have the Art Spot, which will be opening in 2023 in the town core. So the makerspace and the opportunity for art classes and programs that we're working on right now. And another entity that's an arm of the state awarded us $300,000 for that project. Town council had allocated $300,000 to get that project up and going, kind of bare bones. This will allow that to be a much more robust ribbon cutting and offering there. So yeah, really exciting. It was a $900,000 week last week. We've got a couple other grants that are still out there that we're waiting to hear from that could also help fund that Trent Park program, but pretty exciting.
Excellent. Let's talk a little bit about the CDOT corridor study, which is really exciting news for our town, as we've seen challenges over the years with traffic and other issues related to our roads. And so tell us a little bit about what's going on with that.
Yeah, it's exciting. I think we may have mentioned previously that we were in conversation as a stakeholder with CDOT, but they officially announced this week the study of the operations in the corridor on Highway 6, Highway 9, and we'll be looking at Exit 205. So it's a project that will really kick off in 2023. At some point, we'll be engaging the public in that process, but yeah, a long time coming, and very excited to have CDOT's partnership. Dylan's involved as well, along with some other stakeholders. And looking at the press release here, it's great. Director Liu comments on just the importance of this corridor, just not just locally, but regionally, statewide. It's just a critical corridor. So we're excited to have that study coming up, and stay tuned, everybody. We'll have some public input opportunities as that gets moving forward. So I think signal timing through the whole corridor, and then also is that diverging diamond plan that was proposed a number of years ago, is that really the right plan, and kind of getting some conclusion to knowing what do we need to see happen there. So
Great. And moving on to the council meeting on December 14th, we had a number of police department employees recognized during the council meeting, which was really exciting. As with many organizations, you know, staffing can be a challenge, and so to have these folks is fantastic. And so we had the swearing in of a new officer, Officer Christina Costa. And we also had swearing in of 2 new sergeants who are already within our police department, Sergeant Abigail Hosier and Sergeant Jake Arneson. And so they've moved from officers to sergeants. And then we also had recognition for a very long-time employee who's transitioning within the department. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, maybe I'll kick us off with the last one you mentioned, Senior Sergeant Tim Osborne. Very humble and quiet guy, and you could feel that he was, you know, maybe not his favorite place to be standing in front of a lot of people who were giving him accolades. But yeah, 1998, Sergeant Osborne started with Silverthorne. I think he's the longest term employee in that department. And so council staff, his family, other officers recognizing those decades of service. And then, like you mentioned, we're really fortunate that while he's retiring from that role, he's accepted the position of evidence tech. So he's still a part of the organization, and that was really fun to provide that recognition, and the mayor was able to give him that last night. So you also mentioned some sergeant promotions, and so competitive process for officers where they go through written exams and interviews with staff, and I think at least one member of our police advisory committee, and the outcome was promotions for Hosier and Arneson. So they were there. Significant others were there. They get to pin those new badges on, and it was a fun night. And then Officer Costa, very experienced officer, coming to us from Georgia, although had spent a little time in Kremling with that department, but we're happy to have Officer Costa joining us. She referenced that she's getting used to layering. It's a little different climate than Georgia, but those were big night for the police department, and yeah.
It's always fun to, and the mayor loves those evenings.
Yeah.
She's like, this is my favorite part of my job.
Yeah, good stuff.
Excellent. Let's talk about the fire station for a little bit. Can you give us an update? And I understand maybe there were some public comments as well.
You bet. I provided under staff comments just some background to the council, which I think it's been reported on, so it wasn't necessarily anything new, but then we did have a fire in Silverthorne and wanted to provide some information on that, a house fire of a house that was under construction. But kind of going back a little bit, I know that members of our community, myself, have been attending the board meetings of the fire district, and so it was reported on that they they've approved the budget, and they are going to be building a fire station on the property in Silverthorne, building a facility that can ultimately be a 24/7 staffed facility. And so they're in the process of final design, then we'll put that out to construction bid, and will be under construction in 2023. So I think that's good news, and appreciate their efforts there. One clarification, they've got the funds to build the facility. Staffing that when it's open, and usually takes about 24 months to get constructed up here, might still be a budget concern. We are partnering with the fire district in having our grant writer at the town, Sustainable Strategies is the consultant that we work with, who they're pretty effective. We just mentioned a couple of grants that we've received. And so working with the fire district to see, I think there are, I'm going to use my cheat sheet here, but there are opportunities with DOLA, that's Department of Local Affairs locally, HUD, USDA, FEMA, just different opportunities that we're going to bring the expertise of our grant writers into the mix and partner with them and see if we can get some outside funding. So,
excellent.
We talked about that. Then also shared Summit Fire is looking at, there's a storage facility on the west side of Silverthorne that's about to open, and they have some storage units for RVs. They actually can accommodate, they were able to fit the fire truck in there, just fits. And so to store a fire truck and have that available in Silverthorne when it's maybe easier to have a call come out of that facility, not staff, but to have a truck there if they if need to do that. So they're pursuing that, looking at some insulation and heating that would be required to help meet the insurance rating for the community. So good news there. We did have a number of folks that were in the room, and I know that the mayor and I have received some questions about the fire that happened on Saturday morning up in the Three Peaks neighborhood. It was a home that was under construction, and it was a significant fire. And the fire district has not been able to determine the cause because they can't really get into that site until a structural engineer clears them to go in there. But the point that I made at the council meeting, and I can't speak for the fire district, but I can share what Chief Davis had shared with me. There was some chatter on social media and otherwise about response time, some numbers that were out there. It took 40 minutes for them to get there. That's not the case. Chief Davis told me that from the call logs, his estimation that it was 10 minutes or less from the first call to getting on scene. So I'll just share what he shared with me. I think we'll get more details when they do the full debrief of that. And but there were a number of folks at public comment talking about the need for the fire station and the concern about this particular fire. And do appreciate Summit Fire had a lot of good things to say about the Silverthorne water pressure, fire assistance, public works on site. So always a good team effort when you get into those situations. And like I said, I think we'll hear more about kind of the final debrief of, exactly what caused that fire and some specific, probably down to the second details on what was the response time and those kinds of things.
And of course, we're always happy to hear that no one was injured or killed.
Yeah, it was a home under construction, which is still terribly impactful for the folks that are building that home. But in the spectrum of what could have been, it was not an occupied home.
Right. So moving on to consent calendar. Again, more exciting news for Silverthorne, right? We've got the Trent Park expansion, we've got the art spot coming online, and now we have a rec center expansion and renovation, really. So
expansion of certainly of the communal locker room space. So that is, we talked about previously. That is not meeting the needs of the community, so an expansion within the facility. But on consent, just one of the steps in that process, construction contract with A&P. And I think what we'll do is we'll have Stephen Herman, who's our rec center manager, we'll get him in here in the future before we undertake that project and can show everybody what's going to be happening there. Kind of like road construction, it's painful when it's going on, and so it will be a bit of a challenge, but a nice product at the end with much more usable spaces and just upgrades to plumbing and other things that are needing to happen there.
Excellent. Let's see, moving on, we had a renewal of the High Country Healing marijuana license, the only dispensary in town.
Yep, we've got one shop in town, and that went smoothly, as it always has. PD goes over and does a walkthrough, make sure that they're all up to code, and they have been great to work with. Council always thanks them for being a great local business, and so another year for them.
Great. The public hearing portion of the meeting saw a second reading of the ordinance to add add exemptions to the sales tax code. So that's related to bag fees, correct?
We had plastic bag fees in there and kind of some admin details about the remittance of that sales tax. Probably the main thing we've talked before is for people to be aware statewide, January 1st, you're going to start paying for plastic bags. So that's related to that.
Absolutely. And the second item under public hearings, the minor subdivision and final site plan for Azure Landing. And that's the parcel just north of the Eclectic Cafe, correct?
Right, so this was a final site plan. It was on the agenda because it had been noticed, and so it needed to be on the agenda, but the developer had requested a continuance. So some details they're still working on. So didn't get into the details of that. That will come back before council on January 25th.
Great. Action items, the preliminary site plan for the Smith Ranch Apartments, which is really exciting. That's a rental product for workforce housing in our community that we're partnering with Gorman on, and that was approved, correct?
Right. That's went to Planning Commission the week before, and then council has approved that. So it is a town project in that we are the landowners. We have worked on a partnership with Gorman, but the council still has to wear the hats of land use regulation. So what they were looking at is the plans for the building, a lot of conversation about the architecture and parking and snow storage, all the things that you start looking at the preliminary site plan. And I think a fair amount of work on architecture to hopefully get it through final. But like you said, an exciting project For Silverthorne, the entirety of that will be workforce rental AMI from 30% AMI all the way up to 120. So we'll work towards final site plan will be the next opportunity for Planning Commission and Council to weigh in on that one.
There's a lot going on in Silverthorne, for sure.
And that's right next door to the Child Care Center, Wildflower Child Care Center, which is under construction right now.
Correct.
So yeah, a lot going on in that zone there.
Excellent. The second item under action items was an ordinance amending chapter, well, we don't need to give you all the details of the chapter, the numbers.
Chapter and verse.
Chapters and all of that, but it's regarding short-term rentals, which has been a hot topic in our community. And so,
and every community.
Yeah, so that was the first reading. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so just going back a little bit, that's a conversation that really started about 6 months ago with respect to getting community feedback. We've talked before about the fundamentals of the concept is 10% cap in the majority of town, and then a 50% cap in the downtown and riverfront area. And so that's essentially what the ordinance was before the council last night. So staff made a short presentation just kind of reviewing the public outreach efforts that have been made. We had 4 open houses. We had a dedicated email line, did the online survey, which had about 1,400 responses. And so staff briefly went over that. Then each of the council members kind of outlined their position and rationale for the vote that they were going to be taking. We had only 2 members of the public who commented, and then council put it up for a vote, and the ordinance passed 3-2. We had 1 council member who was on an excused absence, and so as you know, the mayor doesn't vote unless there's a tie, and so it was 3-2. And so that will come back for second reading at the first meeting in January. The only change to the ordinance that was in the packet was we had a staff oversight where we didn't include a component the council wanted in there, which was if you are a full-time resident and you're on site and you are renting a short-term room, that wouldn't count towards the overall cap. So if we ever hit the cap, that particular situation wouldn't be impacted. We'll see when we might reach that cap. I think there's a 700 plus unit opportunity right now before you bumped up against that cap. So yeah, a lot of conversation leading up to that vote, but 3-2, and it'll come back for final reading in January.
Right, okay, fantastic. Well, thanks everyone for being with us today. We'll see you back here in mid-January for the recap of the January Town Council meeting. Thanks so much.